page are we on?
We are on page 23A in the copy, the Schottenstein copy of the Talmud you have in front of us. We're in 23A. Well, I got to figure out which 23A. 23A3. 23A3 on the left side. Okay?
Who was Schottenstein?
Schottenstein are very, very generous donors to the Art Scroll Publishing House, who underwrote this English translation of the Talmud. It's a family foundation. I've seen them in Ohio. Was it in Columbus, perhaps? They may have been centered, something like that. And anyone's very generous, very devoted family foundation. Okay, so we finished the whole bit as far as judges appointing each other and whether or not you can appoint one judge or two judges, whether you're appointing a Beit Din or a judge. The bottom line was, if I appoint a judge and you're the other litigant in the case, you appoint a judge, and the two judges choose a third judge, or the discrepancy between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim seems to be Rabbi Meir and Chachamim disagree about that process of picking the third judge. Is it the two litigants who pick the third judge, or is it the two judges who pick the third judge? Okay? So they're going to leave most of that conversation behind, and they're going to go to the next section of our Mishnah. Now, our Mishnah has three sections. It starts with, this one chooses a judge, this one chooses a judge, and they two choose a third. And then it says, this one can declare his judge, the other guy's judge, invalid. This one can declare the other guy's judge invalid. These are the words of Rabbi Meir, but Chachamim say only if he can prove that one of the judges is disqualified as a relative or something like that, but not if he's kosher, not if he's a mumche, an expert. Okay? And then the third part of the Mishnah is, this one can disqualify the other guy's witnesses. This guy can disqualify the other guy's witnesses. And that's Rabbi Meir, and Chachamim say only if they're determined to be karov, related, or something like that, but if they are kosher, you cannot get rid of them. That third section, by the way, drops the concept of if they are experts. And that's going to be part of what drives today's study, is trying to figure out whether we can make an analogy from the appointment to a judge, to the dismissal of a judge, to the dismissal of witnesses, with the operative principle that Chachamim thinks they're arguing about somebody being an expert or not being an expert, and that's why they can or can't be removed from the case. Right? So that's what we're driving at. Today we'll get complex, and I don't know if we'll get through it. So far we've been blessed in that the sugiot have really worked well for a 1 hour class, right? But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes things spill from day to day, page to page. So we'll see where we're going, okay?
Is there a way, I mean, there is a way here, to take the two litigants and throw them out because it's a frivolous suit?
Is there such a thing as a frivolous lawsuit? No.
The judge can't throw it out.
In rabbinical jurisprudence, if you bring a lawsuit that is fraudulent, and it's proven that what you did was fraudulent, was intentionally false, you get punished with whatever the punishment would have been for the person you were lying about.
Oh, okay.
So if you lie in a death penalty case, you get executed. If you lie in a monetary case, you have to pay that money. If it was a case that would have been adjudicated through whipping, you would be whipped. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So there were no frivolous lawsuits. Because in American society, there's no punishment for filing a lawsuit. You can file like a lawsuit that's completely baseless.
Sometimes you have to pay the other guy's legal fees.
Okay.
But that's, not the same thing as being whipped.
But the guy would have to sue you for those legal fees, right? But if you're suing the government, Like there's a whole, what's the name of that domestic terrorist group who is constantly suing the government and clogging up the courts with paperwork? They've killed several police officers on duty over time. It's like Citizen something. I'll come up with it. But there's a terrorist group in America that's a domestic terror group, and one of the things they do is they just file hundreds of pages of motions and lawsuits in the local courts as an act of bureaucratic terrorism against the court system. I'm going to have to sneeze in a second. I apologize whenever it comes. All right, so there it is. Sneeze on the truth. All right. So the conclusion of the last section was you had this idea that Rav and Rav Yehuda were discussing, Rav Yehuda was discussing the name of Rav, whether or not Chachamim and Meir were arguing about whether or not you needed the judge's consent and all that, and that got just left aside. The last braita about the courts in Jerusalem was just a support for that interpretation of Rav Yehuda, that the courts in Jerusalem needed to know who each other were in order to sit. They even needed to know who each other were in order to be seen eating in public or even eating in private. Okay, now the Gemara moves on. So we're on 23a3 on the bottom left. The Gemara moves on to the next dispute in the Mishnah. So we're going to go to the section of the Mishnah that's talking about invalidating each other's judges. We just did a whole section about appointing the judges. Now, once the judge has been appointed, what is the power to invalidate the judge, have the judge removed from the case? Rabbi Meir says you just do it, and Chachamim say that's only if the judge is related, involved in the case, but if he's kosher or he's an expert, you can't touch him. Okay? All right. So, Zeposel Dayano v'chulei. Just a little quote in the Mishnah telling you what we're going to talk about. Kol kamine defasil dayano. Is it in the person bringing the lawsuit's power to disqualify a judge? I mean, obviously, that seems like a crazy idea, that you could get a judge thrown off the case. Rabbi Yochanan, all right, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, be'arkaot shebasuria shanu. This Mishnah teaches about the courts in Syria, which is a place where they don't have well-developed law, they have no Torah scholars, and the Beit Din there is just the local guy doing his best. So in that case, a litigant could throw him out. Now, can Rabbi Yochanan comment on Rabbi Meir?
Why couldn't he?
Well, the reason he can't is because the timeline is wrong. So,
Oh, was Rob Mayer from the Mishnah?
Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Meir are both Mishnah age rabbis, but Rabbi Meir died when Rabbi Yochanan was only like 15 or something like that. So Rabbi Meir precedes Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan really can't actually comment on Rabbi Meir directly, right? You understand what I'm saying?
I understand what
all
you're saying,
right.
but that's not unusual.
It's not unusual. It's not unusual. But again, I'm just pointing out for people that we're not having an actual conversation between them that's being quoted. The Gemara is bringing them against each other as if. Okay, 23a3, now on the right. So, Mar Rabbi Yochanan, ba'arkaot shebasuria shanu. Aval, mumchim lo. So this is going to be posited as a question, but it's a challenge of some kind. If there were experts, the word is low, so I'm trying to phrase it in English in a way that makes sense. But if there were experts, he wouldn't allow them to get rid of them. So Rabbi Meir wouldn't allow the litigants to get rid of them if they were mumchim, if they were experts. Would Rabbi Meir allow the litigant to get rid of a judge who is an expert? That's kind of a challenge. So we're going to phrase it as if it were a question. And it's ha midakatani seifa, because now you have to look at what he says, what it says later in the Mishnah. V'chachamim omrim ematai, when can they reject the judges? Bizman shemevi ra'aya shehem krovim o pesulim, in a time that you bring proof that they are related or they're ineligible for some reason. Aval im chayu ksharim o mumchim mipi beit din eno yachol lefoslan. But if they were kosher, or they were mumchim mipi beit din. So a beit din had certified them as a mumche, as an expert in this area of laws. So they're an authorized legal court that Torah scholar courts have said they're a legitimate court, right? Then in that case, Eino yachol lefoslan. He's not allowed to get rid of them. That's the Chachamim. Miklau de Rabbi Meir mumchim nami kamar. So you would, now this is the Gemara coming and saying, since the Chachamim answered that if they're kosher and mumchim you can't, that means that they're arguing with Rabbi Meir about that point, which means Rabbi Meir was also talking about that point. So the Gemara is now going to say Rabbi Meir was also saying in the case of a mumche, you can get rid of him. And because the Chachamim said, but if he's a mumche, you can't get rid of him. So if they agreed with Rabbi Meir, they wouldn't have said anything because they wouldn't be arguing. So since they are arguing and they did disagree, they must be talking about the same thing. Did everyone follow that logic?
More or less.
That is tricky, typical Talmudic logic. So Rabbi Meir says, you can nullify each other's judges. Chachamim say when? Only when they're ineligible for some reason. But if they're kosher or they're experts, you can't get rid of them.
Right.
Since that was the Chachamim's response to Rabbi Meir, that tells us that Rabbi Meir was talking exactly about that case, a mumche. You can get rid of them, right? So that's what the Gemara says at this point. Everyone with me?
Yes.
So we've established that Rabbi Meir, according to the Gemara, at this point, thinks you can get rid of an expert judge, and it's the Chachamim who say you can't. Okay?
Is this the third judge or each other's judge?
We're back to first judges now. Okay? So the appointing of the judges was what we did before. We're not talking about that anymore. Now we're talking about the removal of judges. Okay? So removal of the other guy's judge. That's what I'm going to talk about. I can remove the other guy's judge. Rabbi Meir, according to this point in the Talmud right here, says you can remove him even if he's an expert.
Could it also be the third judge? I mean,
Could be any of the three.
Oh, any of the
He
three.
could remove his own judge.
Yeah, yeah.
Any of the three.
That's what I thought, yeah.
All right? All right. Miklal de Rabbi Meir mumchim nami kamar. So that teaches us a general principle that Rabbi Meir is also talking about removing expert judges, which, by the way, seems ridiculous. Right? So the Gemara reinterprets the sage's words. Hachi kamar. So this is what the sages really meant to say to Rabbi Meir. They really meant to say, Aval im hayu kasherim, if they were kosher, nasu kemumchim mipi beit din ve'eno yachol lefoslan. So this is going to offer a rewording, an interpretation of the Mishnah. When the sages say, rather, when they're kosher or they're mumchim, you can't get rid of them, let's rephrase that a little bit and say, if they were certified experts by the Beit Din, then you cannot disqualify them. So if they were nasu kemumchim, they were made like experts, mipi Beit Din, ve'enu yachol lefoslan, and therefore you cannot get rid of them. Does it change anything? The dispute between Rabbi Meir and the sages is only whether a litigant may arbitrarily reject an unknowledgeable judge. Rabbi Meir agrees, however, that an expert judge, a mumche, cannot be disqualified.
Right.
All right? So if you rephrase what the Chachamim are saying, it's not saying that Rabbi Meir was talking about disqualifying mumchim. Rabbi Meir is talking about whether or not they have been declared or certified as mumchim before a Beit Din. Then, of course, he wouldn't let them get rid of them, which allows you to do what Rabbi Yochanan said at the top of the column over here on the right, which is to say it really was a lousy court. I mean, it was a court from a place where you don't have judges, right? That's what they were arguing about. All right, now the Gemara again tries to disprove Rabbi Yochanan. So we just saved Rabbi Yochanan by rewording the Chachamim. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying that Rabbi Meir is allowing you to get rid of the judges only because the judges are low-quality judges. right? The Chachamim are always saying experts, and it's whether or not they've been certified or not certified is one way to save it. Now we're going to go after Rabbi Yochanan another way. Tashma, another Baraita, Mishnah age teaching that's not in the Mishnah. Okay? Amru lo Rabbi Meir. So now this is going to be a pretty good quote because you've got a Baraita that is Mishnah age where the Chachamim are actually talking to Rabbi Meir on the topic. Lo chol heimenu sheposel dayano shemumche l'rabim. It is not in the litigant's power to disqualify a judge who is publicly acknowledged an expert. So there's another Baraita that kind of rewords this, who you can and cannot declare to be unfit. They say if the person was mumche l'rabim, okay, if he's an expert in the eyes of the populace, okay, if the masses of people see him as an expert, you can't get rid of him. He's been accepted. Okay? That's a rewording to try and go after Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara offers a different explanation of this Baraita. Now we're going to look at that Baraita, and the Gemara is going to say, Ema, no, I would say that Baraita, the sages are saying, Lo chol heimenu sheposel dayanan shehimchuhu rabim alehem. It is not in the litigant's power to disqualify an unknowledgeable judge that they authorize to provide over them in lieu of an expert. He's not a mumche. Himchuhu. They made him like a mumche. Like they gave him a doctorate without writing a dissertation. Right? They just installed him in the position.
How does the public authorize them or
Oh,
acknowledge them?
we vote judges in all the time, and there's no basis in law for the person's training.
No, what I mean is, the
We're going to the-
judges are usually qualified by other rabbis.
Yeah, but in this case where there's not Surah and
This is still in
Pramadita,
Surah?
maybe you're in Surah, maybe you're in some small town, there's not a yeshiva, you don't have a rabbinate, you don't have people to provide you the certification for a judge, and they made themselves a judge,
Okay.
right? And now the question is, once they've done that, is he a mumche? Does he have the authority of an expert judge? Because if he doesn't, you can question his rulings too, right? So you have to have Torah law somehow, right? But it's not unlike what we're going to do tomorrow. There's a couple of judges on the ballot.
Yeah, so,
Do they have to have gone to law school?
no.
You can elect me to be a judge in the area, right? I know nothing about the law, but if I win the election, boom, I'm a judge,
Okay.
right? Okay, so where'd we go? All right, now, so Rabbi Meir would allow that person to be disqualified because in his mind, he was only made a mumche by the people, right? And the sages would say, no, once he was made a mumche, however that happened, he's a mumche, and you can't get rid of him. So now, Rabbi Yochanan is kind of back again, because he was the Archaot to Syria, right? He was talking about poor courts in Syria. Tanya Nami Hachi. So to further support that, we're going to bring another Baraita. Le'olam posel v'holech. The litigant may go on and on to reject the other guy's judge. So he rejected a judge, he brought a new judge. He rejected that judge, he brought a new judge. He rejected that judge. He brought in, is ein sof l'davar? Is there an end to it? Ad until sheyikabel alav beit din shehamumche l'rabim, until he accepts one, the guy is brought in one who is publicly acknowledged as a mumche of like a beit din. So divrei Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir. So they have a Baraita that actually explains the circumstances under which Rabbi Meir says you can be posel, you can get rid of the other guy's judge. And it has a limit of once the guy is a Beit Din Mumche, you can't do it. So this Baraita actually seems to make Rabbi Meir agree with the Chachamim in our Mishnah.
So this can go on forever.
Everything we're talking about can go on forever. As long as you can keep bringing in new sources that were off the cutting room floor that didn't make it into the Mishnah, you can continue to spin this around in circles. So now, if you have Rabbi Meir, according to this Baraita, giving a limit about being a mumche, and therefore then what's he arguing with the Chachamim? He must be arguing about something. And what would Rabbi Yochanan's comment about Rabbi Meir mean about the Archaot to Syria, the courts in Syria? So you have to try and figure that out. Gemara once again questions Rabbi Yochanan's contention that Rabbi Meir agrees that a litigant cannot reject an expert judge. So Rabbi Yochanan was like, he doesn't agree with the Chachamim. You can get rid of an expert judge because you have these judges in Syria. That's Rabbi Yochanan's point of view. We just came to a point where the Baraita said, Rabbi Meir says, the person can be made an expert even if he didn't start an expert, and once that happens, you can't get rid of him. Yes.
Yeah, so let's say he's been making judgments, but now there's a new type of issue that's up that he's not familiar with. And so even though he's been making judgments on monetary issues, as you say, and all of a sudden we get into this whole new thing called bitcoins that he has absolutely no understanding about. And so he was an expert on, interest rates and, real estate. But
So
now
they're not really talking about expert. I know we talked about it last week as experts in the law. That was just a specific areas of law. That was like a modern analogy to grease the skids of our conversation. For them, a mumche really means an expert in Torah law, which applies to everything. So you don't need to know Bitcoin if you know Torah law, because Torah law is the big category. So he's been certified or made an expert in Torah law, and now he's good to go. Okay? All right? Good. Here we go. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Those are the words of Rabbi Meir. Now, you have to go and deal with that. V'ha edim kemumchim dame. So now we're going to try and figure out if we can say Rabbi Meir and Chachamim are having that particular argument about a person who's made a mumche by appointment to the bench, as opposed to being a mumche from his training and knowledge base. Okay? And the way we're going to try and figure out if that's what Rabbi Meir and Chachamim were really talking about is now by looking at the third part of the Mishnah, where you are disqualifying a deem, and whether or not a deem can be called a mumche or not, or they're inherently a mumche or not. And what's interesting is that when Chachamim say, in what case can you get rid of an aid, in the Mishnah, they leave out the category of mumche. If you look back at the Mishnah, this third section of the Mishnah, it says ematai, and it says bizman shehem krovim or pisulim, aval kshehem ksherim ein. You can't. It says when they're kosher, you can't disqualify them. It doesn't say anything about mumche. It drops the topic, drops the category. So we're going to try and draw analogy from the witnesses in the third part of the Mishnah back to the disqualifying of judges in the second part of the Mishnah to figure out if we can intuit what Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim were arguing about.
What constitute a mumche aid?
So they're going to talk about that. All right. See, the question is, what makes an aid an expert, right? And let's hold off on that and see how they view a witness in terms of that. Okay.
Let's get the judges.
Well, they're going to get to it really quickly. Let's read it so I don't tip it for you. Okay. Okay. Va'amar Rabbi Meir ze posel edav shel ze. I'm sorry. So hang on. So the objection to this is Divrei Rabbi Meir was if a court that publicly acknowledged an expert, you cannot get rid of him. That's Divrei Rabbi Meir. V'ha edim kemumchim dami. The voice of the Gemara comes in and makes this logical objection. But witnesses are like experts. So if witnesses are like experts, and Rabbi Meir just said you can only get rid of judges until they are experts, but all witnesses are experts, then how can you say that? Because in the third part of the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir lets you get rid of witnesses. So if Rabbi Meir truly says you can't get rid of experts and witnesses are experts, he never would have said you can get rid of witnesses. Everyone following the logic?
Yeah, I'm following the logic, but I don't remember that from the Mishnah.
The third part of the Mishnah, let's go back and review it.
No, I'll take your word for it.
I'll just read it quickly. Zeposel edav shel zeh v'zeposel edav shel zeh divrei Rabbi Meir v'chachamim omrim ematai bizman shemevi ala alehen ra'aya shehem krovim o poslim aval im hayu kesherim eino yachol lefoslam.
Right, so once they're kosher, you can't disqualify them.
But the Chachamim in the first two categories said kosher or mumche. and here they just said kosher.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So the Gemara comes in and says, hey, witnesses are like experts. So how can you say Rabbi Meir is willing to get rid of them? V'amar Rabbi Meir, zeh posel edav shel zeh, v'zeh posel edav shel zeh. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Meir says, you can get rid of his witnesses, or this guy can get rid of their witnesses. How is that possible if we're only arguing about experts, but Rabbi Meir doesn't argue about experts? Okay. Itmar Allah. So, it was stated regarding Rabbi Meir, Amar Reish Lakish, that Reish Lakish said something of import. Okay, do you remember when Reish Lakish was? Reish Lakish is like 200 to 275, first level Amora, and so he's after the Mishnah. So it's okay, he's coming and quoting in Rabbi Meir. He says, Pe Kadosh Yomar Davar Zeh? A holy mouth would say such a thing? Reish Lakish comes in and says, Rabbi Meir is not an idiot. Why would Rabbi Meir ever say that what? That you can get rid of witnesses or experts, something, what's the objection?
A litigant may reject even someone who is.
How can a litigant object another litigant's witnesses? Right? I get to throw your witnesses out?
Well, if it's a relationship to the judge.
But that's Chachamim. Rabbi Meir just says you can nullify them. He doesn't say in what condition. And Chachamim say only if they're related or they're, right? But Rabbi Meir is a blanket statement. Right? So how could he say such a thing? Reish Lakish is actually saying the Mishnah is a problem. How could Rabbi Meir ever say such a stupid thing in the Mishnah? Which, by the way, would also undermine the whole Rabbi Yochanan interpretation of the Baraitas that we've been dealing with.
Just to bring it up to the present, suppose it's hearsay testimony.
Mm-hmm. Right. For witnesses to be kosher, they go into this mostly in Ketubot, but other places as well. They have to have been present. Right? The witnesses can't say, I heard on reliable testimony that it was X, Y, and Z. Hearsay is never admissible in court, in rabbinic court.
It has to be direct observation.
You have to have been there.
And don't they have to swear?
And they have to swear. And the most important way to knock a witness out is to have two other witnesses that testify that he wasn't there. You know, I think my daughter doesn't know that I have a job.
She's entitled to question.
He doesn't know your day job?
She knows it. Maybe she thinks I only work Saturday when I make her go to shul.
She's one of the Air Force ROTCs at school?
My daughter?
Yeah.
She's in Air Force. Yeah,
One that's very,
Air Force
very
ROTC.
commendable.
She's an officer now. They promoted her this year.
Okay.
She's one of the leaders. And 11th grade, which is nice.
Does that mean when she goes, not to get off the subject, but when she goes to college, she doesn't have to go to Air
No,
Force, or-
there's no obligation to go into the military from high school ROTC. Because they haven't been given anything. They don't owe anything. Only 5% of the kids out of the ROTC here go into military ROTC.
Does she want to?
Look, it's a great way to pay for school.
It is.
It's on the table. Okay, Talmud class, we're broadcasting live. Okay, so what's going to happen? So, Tanei Edo. So Reish Lakish does a remarkable thing, right? This is where you have to get out of the fundamentalist interpretation of our rabbinic tradition. Even though it's in the Mishnah, the people of the age of the Mishnah and the Amoraim following the Mishnah did not think the Mishnah in these words was given at Mount Sinai. They understood the Mishnah was a completely human document, written and created by the rabbis of the Mishnah, whose content and wording was debated by the rabbis after the Mishnah, and that was fine. And here's an example. Reish Lakish says, Tanei, Edo. He says, no, the Mishnah is wrong. Amend the Mishnah to say Edo instead of Edav. In other words, Rabbi Meir says, Ze posel Edo shel ze, v'ze posel Edo shel ze. This one can nullify his opponent's single witness, and this can nullify his opponent's single witness. And the Chachamim say that's only if they're related or they're nullified for some reason, but if they're kosher, he can't get rid of them, that one witness. How does that help us? Right? So how does that help us? Edo lamai, so regarding what? Ilema lamamon, regarding what case can he get rid of the other guy's single witness? If you were to say that it was a monetary court case, Rachmana Paslei, God, the merciful one, has already rendered him invalid. What does that mean? Well, the Torah says, Al pi shnaim yakum davar. A thing can only be established in court on the basis of two witnesses. If you only bring one witness that I owe you $5,000, you don't have a case. God himself in the Torah has already thrown your case out. Right? So now you're going to say, if you're going to say, if Reish Lakish is amending the Mishnah to say that Rabbi Meir is actually saying he can only throw out the other guy's witness if there's only one witness, that does, well, when? In a money court case? The witness doesn't work anyways. Right? Or ila shavua, or if it's to force the litigant to take a sacred oath as an outcome of the court case. Heimone meheman kivei trei. Right? It is believed as if he is a pair of witnesses. What does that mean? Again, going to Ketubot, where they go into this. If you bring one witness into the court, and the witness is a kosher witness, but you don't have two, that I owe you $5,000. What's the court going to do? Throw the case out? Ignore the fact that a perfectly upstanding member of this community and his perfectly upstanding kosher witness both are telling the court that I owe this money? They're going to just ignore that? Well, they don't. They make me swear on the divine name that I don't owe the money. Now, if I swear on the divine name falsely, it's death penalty.
Really?
Yes. All right? So that's a very serious outcome. But I don't have to pay the money. So rabbinic jurisprudence is one witness can force me to make an oath with the same power of two witnesses. One witness is enough to force me to do something. In other words, Rabbi Meir, according to Reish Lakish, could be saying one witness and it would matter in a certain case. Even monetary cases where you need two witnesses to establish it. Okay?
If he swears,
If he swears, he's let off, he doesn't have to pay the money.
Can the litigant be his own witness?
No. Because you're karov. You're nogea b'davar. You're involved in the case.
Isn't that like today's he said, she said?
Very much so. What's that, Phil?
You may have that, if you owe me money,
Yeah.
don't I sign it? I sign something.
Oh, if there's a star, if there's a document with witnesses signed on the document, that's it. We're done. Present the star. The only way to uproot the star, the document, would be for other witnesses to come and to testify that those witnesses on the document are not kosher on the document. Because they're karov, they're related to the document, or they're pasul le'edut, they're not kosher witnesses, or they weren't there at the time the document says it was signed. Right? But I would need to now undermine those witnesses. The document's effective. Right? You don't need anything. You bring a document, the court will enforce it.
So, I still don't understand, if a person swears, and you only have one witness,
There's one witness against you, you swear you didn't do it, you go off scot-free.
but it says two, and how, I don't see how they got, you need,
Oh, the Mishnah said you need two,
I don't understand how.
and the Torah said you need two.
And how-
Reish Lakish said the Mishnah is wrong, because Rebbe Meir would sound like a total moron for saying that, because how could you allow anybody to get rid of the other guy's two witnesses? Therefore, let's say that Rebbe Meir actually said one witness, which would make a certain amount of sense. When? In money cases, you need two. No, not in money cases. In money cases where there's one and you need to swear an oath. In that case, Rebbe Meir says you can get rid of the other guy's witness, which matters because you wouldn't have to swear the oath. Because now there's not one witness, because you can get rid of him. And the Chachamim would say, no, you can only get rid of that one witness if he is karov or not kosher, but if he's kosher, you can't get rid of him. Like the whole Reish Lakish change to the Mishnah, you can now run the whole Mishnah according to that change to see what would happen to the argument between Meir and Chachamim. Got it? That's That's what Talmud does. This is what Talmud does. Okay? Okay.
It's a little unusual for the Talmud to say the Mishnah is wrong.
It's not unusual for Reish Lakish to say the Mishnah is wrong.
Okay.
Okay? So he can come in and he can amend it because he's the bridge generation. He lived from 200 to like 280. So he's the first generation of Morah, and he's in the land of Israel. So he's like right there. All right. The Gemara says, Le'olam l'mamon. Very cute. I could actually say, Le'olam, that we really are talking about a money case. Like the money, not the swearing of the money. It's mamon. La tzricha de kable ale levetre. And it's necessary only where he has accepted upon himself the one as if he were two. It's not a great solution, but you could say that the Mishnah is talking about, you could say that Reish Lakish is talking about making it one witness, even in a money case, where the money will be enforced to be paid, which normally needs two witnesses.
Right.
When would that be? That would be if the litigant had said, this one guy, he is worth two any day, and we both accept him as a binding witness, whatever his testimony is. In that case, Rabbi Meir would, what? Still allow him to get rid of him, which doesn't solve Reish Lakish's solution, because Reish Lakish is trying to stop Rabbi Meir from being able to throw out like any level of testimony. So what this means is that Rabbi Meir would be saying, okay, it's one witness, it's still money cases, I accepted him because I thought he was great, then I heard what he had to say, and now I'm going to throw him out, because I'm going to say, no, wait a minute, I don't like what he's saying, that's only one witness, I withdraw my approval. And maybe they're arguing about whether or not he can do that, which is going to start to sound a lot like once the judge has been installed, regardless of his qualifications, you can't get rid of him anymore. Once this witness has been installed with the strength of the power of two, can you then get rid of him or not?
Okay.
That's the kind of stuff they're starting to play with. Okay? Here we go. So, in light of Reish Lakish's explanation, the Gemara questions the need for our Mishnah to cite the dispute. Right? Because now, if that's what's going on, Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim don't even disagree, because it's just a matter of, are you calling that a mumche or not? So, my kamash malan, so what is Rabbi Meir trying to teach us? Kamash malan is present tense, he is teaching us. De matze hadarbe, he can, hadar, remember if you're changing Aramaic to Hebrew, a hey is a chet, a dalet is a zayin. Hadar is chazar. Okay? It's not hidur in Hebrew, meaning like making something beautiful. This is Aramaic, hadar means chazar. So, de matze hadar be.
What is the dollar?
Hadar in Aramaic
It's
means
chazar.
chazar in
Chazal. Oh,
chazar,
Reish.
Chazal.
to return.
Yes, okay.
To return. La chazor. Okay? All right, so, de matze hadar be. So the Rabbi Meir is teaching us that he can retract his acceptance of the witness. Tnina, why would we need to be taught that? It says, because after all, we already learned this in another Mishnah, which is our Mishnah, which started this chapter. Amarlo, if one litigant said to the other, Ne'amana, this is the Mishnah right before us. Oh, no, this is the Mishnah on the next page. I'm sorry, this is the next Mishnah. So it's quoting the next Mishnah, assuming you've already read the next Mishnah. Remember, the Gemara assumes you know all Mishnah at all times. So it doesn't think that I can't tell you something until I've told it to you. It's perfectly willing to say, as you know, about something it hasn't taught yet. Right? Because it was a library of materials that the editor put together. The materials didn't get produced in any order. The editor put them in this order, so he gets to quote the other stuff. Everything is a hyperlink. You read articles on the internet and every other thing is a hyperlink. You have to assume that every hyperlinked word and sugya and quote is always known throughout the whole thing. You don't go look it up. The fact that it's there means you already know it. Do you already know it? No. So a student of Talmud would now go look it up, but Schottenstein makes it easy on you and tells you in the footnote that you'll find it on page 24a, which we'll be studying in a couple of weeks. All right, so what's the Mishnah they're referring to? The Mishnah they're referring to is this. Tanina, it is taught in a Mishnah. Amar lo, he said to him, Ne'eman alai Abba, my father is acceptable to me to act as a judge. Ne'eman alai Avicha, your father is acceptable to me as a judge. Ne'emanin alai shalosh roe vakar, I am perfectly willing to accept 3 cattle herders, which are presumed, cattle herders are presumed thieves and not kosher for witness because they herd their cattle over other people's property, causing damage and eating their crops. So they're inherently not kosher, usually, as judges or witnesses. Rabbi Meir Omer Yachol Lachazor Bo, Rabbi Meir says in that case, where a guy said, you know what, my father, your father, and this shepherd over here, they're all good for the Beit Din on this case, let's go. Rabbi Meir says you can retract that. The Chachamim Omrin Eino Yachol Lachazor Bo. But the Chachamim say he cannot retract that once he has agreed to it.
What happened to a relative not able to be a judge or a witness?
So the question is,
Father.
is the relative prohibited from being a judge or a witness, or is it only that I don't have to accept him as the judge or the witness if I don't want? Let's say your father is my best friend, and he never liked you anyways. And I want him on the court. So I could say, your father is a kosher judge for me. Right?
What about it being a witness?
Same thing, same scenario. So the question is, are they forbidden, or can they just not be enforced? Like, you can object or you can waive your objection. Some things in the law you can waive your rights, some things in the law you can't waive your rights. Right? So that's what they're saying, that's what we're arguing about. Now, V'amar Rav Dimi berei de Rav Nachman berei de Rav Yosef. And Rav Dimi, the son of Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Yosef, who we have no idea who he is or when he lived, he is, by the way, not Rav Dimi, who is a different guy, who is going to show up just to sow confusion in a little bit in this chapter. This is a different guy. He said, Kagon de kable ale bechad. It's an instance where he accepted the ineligible father as one of the 3 judges. So since the Mishnah there cites Rabbi Meir's opinion that a litigant may rescind his previous consent, why is it necessary to record the same ruling in our Mishnah? So we just said that our Mishnah is a case where Rabbi Meir is saying that if he wants to retract, he can retract if he had allowed a relative to be on the court. And the objection to that is, why would you say that's what the Mishnah is saying, since the next Mishnah says that? We don't need this Mishnah to be twisted and interpreted in that fashion to say something that's going to be said out loud in the next Mishnah. Makes no sense, right? That's a good argument. It's a pretty solid argument. Now, tzricha is the answer. No, it's necessary. It has to do that in both cases. Why? And now, here's the structure of tzricha. Tzricha is a word that gets used in Gemara all the time, and what follows, the paragraph that follows it, always follows the exact same pattern. Somebody says X. Oh boy, I left this. Somebody says X. Okay? And somebody says, but I already have X. I'll call it X2. Therefore, this is a logical, I do not need X. Okay? So I have X in another place, therefore I don't need the first X. That's the logic chain. The answer to that is, actually, no. Tzricha means I need X and X2. Because, and now you're going to have a series of if. If I had X and not X2, then I would wrongly conclude something. And if I had x2 and not x, then I would wrongly conclude. So it's going to say tzricha, and then it's going to say tzricha. That's the structure. So in the Gemara, you find the first tzricha, you find the second tzricha, and everything in between is going to follow the logic of what would I wrongly conclude if I only had the first, what would I wrongly conclude if I only had the second. Therefore, tzricha, I need them both, which means it's okay to interpret Rabbi Meir this way here, even though I have it in the next Mishnah, because I need them both. So the word tzricha sends you down the rabbit hole into this logical puzzle. Always, everywhere in Talmud. Okay? Some words are they're structured.
Yeah,
They give structure.
I don't know what the translation of the word would be.
Sarich.
Sarich, it means
You have
you
to.
have
It's,
to.
it's necessary. We need it.
Sarich.
It is necessary.
With, to be necessary.
Tzricha. It is a necessary thing. Okay? So let's see where our tzricha is. Okay? So let's find the first tzricha. And thankfully the second tzricha is at the end of that paragraph. So on 23b1, on the left, it says Gemara answers tzricha, blah, 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 blah. Last word of the paragraph, tzricha. So we're spared a tzricha that goes on for a page or two, which it could. Usually they're very tight like this. Okay, so it's necessary, tzricha. So why do we need Rabbi Meir to be interpreted in our Mishnah as arguing about being able to retract a witness after giving your permission to have the witness, when it already says that about a father as a judge in the next Mishnah? Because de'itana abba avicha, because if it had only taught the case of my father, your father, then paka amre rabbanan de lo matze hadarbe. In that case, the rabbis maintain that he may not retract his acceptance, mishun da abba avicha chazu la'alma, because my father and your father are fit for others to whom they are not related. So the rabbis would have said, in that case, if you only had the abba avicha, then Rabbi Meir is saying you can retract if it's a father, and the Chachamim would be saying you can only you cannot rule those two judges out in other people's cases, right? But they're karov here, so you could rule them out. Right. So it shifts the argument with Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is talking about my father, your father, but the Chachamim would say, maybe they're fit for others whom they're not related, and therefore you can't get rid of them, but Rabbi Meir would say I could still get rid of them. I don't know. Aval chad b'vei trei de'alma lo chazeh. However, in our Mishnah's case of a single witness in lieu of two who is not qualified for any case, ema modu leila Rabbi Meir. So in our case, where I'm not talking about a dayan, a judge, I'm talking about just a witness who he has accepted and then rejected, maybe the Chachamim would have accepted Rabbi Meir's teaching because he's not an expert, so they wouldn't have gone along with it. So that would have been a wrong conclusion. If I didn't have Rabbi Meir and Chachamim arguing about it here in our Mishnah, I only had the Abba question in the other Mishnah, I couldn't have learned all of the implications I needed for the Chachamim here. Therefore, the Chachamim would be agreeing with Rabbi Meir here, and the halacha would wind up being the opposite of what it actually is. And on the other hand, v'i ashma'in and baha, and if we only taught our Mishnah here, and not the case of your father, my father, Bahaka Amar Rabbi Meir, then here Rabbi Meir would be saying that you can retract only with an aid, a witness, aval behahi emamodu laho l'Rabbanan. But in the case of a father, my father, your father, who's a qualified judge, he would have you wouldn't have Rabbi Meir saying it's not allowed. Therefore, Rabbi Meir would have accepted the Chachamim in saying that that person can be forced onto the court because he's a mumche, because he's an expert. right? So if I had only had the case of Ava Avicha, I wouldn't have thought Rabbi Meir and Chachamim were arguing about an aid. If I only had the case about the aid, I would have thought that Rabbi Meir acknowledged the Chachamim regarding a judge.
Got it.
Both of which are wrong, so tzricha. Got it?
Yes,
Please don't make me do it again.
I got it.
All right, everyone with us? So that's what tzricha does. It gives you, if I had the first one, here's a bad outcome. If I had the second one, here's a bad outcome. I need them both, therefore they're necessary. Okay, so who's on the hook? Rabbi Meir and Chachamim are still arguing. So
Reish Lakish.
Reish Lakish seems to be back on the hook. So Reish Lakish was the one who said that the Mishnah is talking about a single aid. He's the one who changed the wording of the Mishnah to Eido from Eidav. Okay? Ha midikatani Reisha dahainu v'seifa Eidav. But since the beginning part of the Mishnah said his judge, Dayano, and the latter part said Eidav, his witnesses, Alma Davka Katani, evidently the words of the Mishnah actually know what they're talking about. And were specifically chosen to teach those different cases. And it was his judge and his witness says plural. So Rabbi Meir, in fact, does allow the litigant to invalidate a pair of witnesses. And the question on Rabbi Yochanan's contention that Rabbi Meir agrees that expert judges cannot be rejected returns. How can Rabbi Meir allow a litigant to reject the testimony of expert witnesses? So if the witnesses are experts, how can he reject them? So the Rabbi Yochanan issue about the lousy courts in Syria doesn't apply to witnesses. Witnesses everywhere are witnesses. They're the same no matter where they are. They're not trained to be witnesses. Right? They're just witnesses. So are they already mumchim in the category of witness? How can you throw out somebody who's a witness?
But mumche and aid are different things.
So, to be unassailable as a judge, you have to be a mumche.
Okay.
If a witness is unassailable, he's like a mumche.
Witness gives testimony on what he saw.
Makes him like a mumche.
That makes him mumche.
Maybe. That's the logic that we're about to enter. Can you draw an analogy from the mumche question of a dayan to the question of the witness? Is mumche a operative category for the witness question? That's what we're about to argue over. That's where we're going. I told you it's a rabbit hole. We'll extricate ourselves from it soon. Okay? But here we go.
We finally get down to cases.
We never get to cases. The Talmud is not here. The Talmud is not the Shulchan Aruch. The Talmud is not here to tell you what the halacha is. The Talmud is here to show you how the halacha is discussed. That's what the Talmud is here for. To train you in the discussion of halacha. If you've got to go and rule on a case, you're going to go sit on a Beit Din, they're going to bring witnesses, you're going to make your best decision, you're going to rule on the case, and then you're going to go back to studying Talmud. But the study of Talmud is different than the ruling in a courtroom. So we're learning how to learn.
Just, I know you want to redo it, but if you're going to use your X and X2 and then your outcome, what would be here your X? What would be your X2?
Okay, so here, the X is understanding Rabbi Meir and Chachamim as arguing over the removal of a witness, or perhaps judge, in the case,
Father.
no, that's not it, that's X2. The removal of a judge or a witness, kind of stam. And B, which got interpreted as the removal of a judge who's a karov, who's like related to you. B is where it actually says in the next Mishnah, my father, your father. So if this is a judge, my father, your father, and this is a witness who's being eliminated. So this got interpreted as being like a karov. If this is correct, that this is like a karov, like a relative, then this and this are like the same case. But since this is about a single witness and this is about a judge, you could have wrong conclusions if you didn't have both of them, to know that that logic, that concern applies to both cases, the witness case and the judge case. So we reinterpreted the part of our Mishnah that's talking about a witness according to the same logic as another Mishnah that talks about a judge.
Okay, so that's the whole idea, that the logic for choosing a judge.
The logic for
is the same-
eliminating a judge.
The logic of eliminating a judge is the same logic for eliminating a witness.
In this interpretation.
For money?
Of course, in any, well, it's
In a,
not-
even in a money case, if the guy had accepted the person, can he reject him? That's the category. If I've accepted a witness who's not normally acceptable, can I then later reject him? If I've accepted a judge who is my relative, who's not normally acceptable, can I later reject him? Rabbi Meir says I can later reject both. Chachamim says you cannot reject both once you've accepted them. Okay, want me to run it again? So, in the case of the single witness, Rabbi Meir and Chachamim are arguing about whether or not you can eliminate the witness after you have accepted him, even though he's not a qualified witness because he's a relative or something like that. So you've accepted a witness who's a relative. And then you say later, nah, I take it back.
Is this maybe like after you know what he said?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't like what he said.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't like it.
I
Right.
don't like what I think he's gonna say.
Right.
No, or-
So this is about a witness, and this is about a judge who is your father. So, but in both cases, it's the person has been accepted, even though there was real basis not to. And once I've accepted him, can I then retract my acceptance? Rabbi Meir says yes, Chachamim say no. So this is in the case of a witness, this is in the case of a judge. If I had only had this, I would have thought that Rabbi Meir might say you can't do it with a judge. If I had only had the judge, I might have thought Chachamim would say you can do it with a witness. Both of those would be wrong conclusions, therefore I need both cases, even though it's the exact same logic in both places. We just want to make sure we understand the outcomes. Tzricha. Therefore you need them both. Did I do it yet? Did I hit the nail on the head enough? Okay. I don't know if I'm hitting a nail on the head or beating a horse.
X is judge, X2 are witnesses. And that-
X is witness,
A witness.
singular.
Oh,
X2 is judge, singular. This witness is unacceptable for some reason. We don't know why. This judge is unacceptable because he's my father or your father. Right? Which are different enough that you need both cases to teach all of the different variables. Okay. Good. Let's move on whether or not. 2 minutes. I'll just set up what's next. Okay, so Ha midakatani reisha dainu desefer edav. So since the first part of the Mishnah said his judge and the second part said his witnesses, we're going to say that that was actually intentional, and we're not talking about one witness. The whole thing we just did about one witness is gone. Forget about it. We're really talking about him getting rid of two witnesses, but it still might be the case of witnesses that he shouldn't or couldn't or maybe didn't have to accept and so forth. That's still alive. All right? Let's stop. Because we're going to get into Rabbi Elazar, and Rabbi Elazar goes for a little while. All right? We'll try and hold that in our heads for another week, and we'll see you next Monday. Fun, fun, fun. This time we're not ending